Welcome to the Build Your Private Practice podcast, a space for Canadian therapists who want to support others, make an impact, and build a sustainable practice that works for them too. I'm your host, Liane Wood, a registered psychotherapist, group practice owner, and business mentor, and I'm here to help you build a private practice that allows you to keep doing the work you love without burning out. Because the people who need your help the most are counting on you, and you deserve a practice that supports you while you support them. Let's dive in. Here's what I wish someone had told me about starting a private practice. The systems you set up in your first 6 months will decide whether you grow steadily or burn out trying. Booking by email, tracking sessions in a spreadsheet, chasing payments, that's the path most practitioners regret. Jane is the practice management software that I point BYPP members to when they're setting up their first practice. Scheduling, charting, billing, and online payments all in one place. Built in Canada by people whose mission is to help the helpers. New to practice? Check out the new practice guide from Jane. Links are in the show notes below. Well, welcome back to the Build Your Private Practice podcast. I'm your host, Liane Wood, and this is the podcast for Canadian mental health practitioners who are ready to build a private practice that supports your life, not one that quietly drains you in the name of helping other people. And today, I'm tackling a topic that I know is going to be a little bit spicy, and I'm going to push back today on something I hear frequently in our profession. And I'm going to ask you to consider a reframe that might land differently than you expect. We're going to talk about your regulatory college. So stay with me because this is not the episode you might think it is. Now, if you've spent any time in therapist circles in Canada, whether it's at a conference, in a Facebook group, at a peer consultation, anywhere where 2 or more practitioners are gathered, you've probably heard this conversation. You may have even been a part of it. I know I have certainly been part of it at some points. And the conversation is about your regulatory college. And it usually starts with something specific, maybe the annual fee that went up again, the CE requirements that feel like a moving target, or the documentation standards that take longer than the therapy did, the complaints process that everyone has a story about, the audit that took weeks of evenings, or the new policy that no one was consulted on, the form that asked the same question on page 2 that it asked on page 1. The complaints are real, and I'm not going to pretend that they aren't. Every regulatory body in our country, in every province, has things about them that are clunky, slow, frustrating, and sometimes poorly designed. I have my own list, you have your own list, and we probably overlap on some of it. But here's what I have noticed about the way these conversations go. The frustrations are rarely about specific policy mechanics. They get framed in a particular tone, a tone of betrayal, a tone of being policed, a tone of they don't understand us, they don't care about us, they exist to make our lives harder. The college becomes, in the way we talk about it, an adversary, the institution that does not have our backs. And I've heard this so many times in so many ways from so many therapists I respect deeply. And for a long time, I nodded along because honestly, when the annual renewal email lands in my inbox and I have to spend time going through CE logs and verifying my hours and updating my information, I feel it too. The mild dread, the why is this so much? But the way we frame it collectively as a profession, I think that frame is wrong. And I think it's costing us something. And so let me push back on it today with love, with respect for every frustration on your list, and with the goal of offering you a different way to hold this whole thing. If you think your regulatory body exists to police you, I think you're reading the whole profession wrong. And that is a strong sentence, I know. I mean it, let me back it up, because your college does not exist for you. That is the first thing to be clear about. The college does not work for therapists. It's not a professional association, and it's not a member benefit organization. Its job is not to make your life easier. The college exists for the public. It exists because somebody has to stand between the public, your potential clients, my potential clients, every Canadian who might one day walk into a therapy office, and the small percentage of practitioners who, for whatever reason, should not be practicing. And that small percentage exists. It exists in every profession. It exists in medicine, in law, in nursing, in accounting, in any field where one person sits in a room with another person in a position of trust. Most practitioners are ethical, careful, and skilled, and some are not. Some have impairments they have not disclosed. Some have ethical lapses. Some are working outside their competence, and some are doing real harm. If there is no structure standing between those practitioners and the public, what does the public have? Nothing. They have hope. They have a Google review. They have the practitioner's own description of themselves, but they have no independent verification that the person they are about to be vulnerable with is, in fact, qualified, supervised, accountable, and safe. And that is what a regulatory college is. It is the support that does the independent verification and is the reason the professional title you have and that you use means anything at all. Without your college, therapist is just a word anyone can put on a business card. It's the same as life coach or energy healer or any of the other titles that have no regulation, no accountability, no minimum standards, and no complaint process. Some of those practitioners are wonderful, and some of them are dangerous. The public has no way to know which is which because no institution is doing the work of telling them. Your college is the institution that does that work for your profession so that the public can walk through your door, sit down, and trust that they are talking to someone who has been vetted. This is not policing. That's protection of the public. And though it is less obvious, of you. So let me say something about that trust because I think it is the most undervalued asset in your whole practice. When a new client books a first session with you, do you ever stop to think about what they are actually trusting? They've never met you. They've read your website, maybe. They may have read a review. They might have a referral from someone they trust, but fundamentally, they are about to sit in a room or on a video call with a stranger and tell that stranger things they have not told most of the people in their life about their marriage, about their trauma, about their sexual history, about the time they thought about ending their life. And that is an extraordinary act of trust. And here is what makes that act of trust possible. It's not your warm smile, and it's not your beautifully designed website. It's not your tagline. Those things help them choose you specifically among the other practitioners who are qualified. But the underlying trust, the assumption that you are not going to harm them, that you are accountable to someone, that there is some recourse if something goes wrong, that trust is not built by you. That trust is built by your college. The client walking through your door is walking through a door the college built. You didn't build that door. None of us did individually. The door has been built and rebuilt by decades of regulatory work, by the people who set the standards of your training program that it had to meet, by the people who designed the registration exam that you wrote, by the people who maintain the public register so anyone can verify your credentials, by the people who investigate complaints, yours, mine, anyone's, and decide which ones have merit, by the people who write the standards of practice that you might find tedious, but that, when followed, protect everyone involved. That is what your client is trusting when they sit down across from you. They are trusting the whole architecture. You are the last piece of it. You're the most visible piece, but you are not the foundation. The foundation is invisible to them. Most clients have no idea who CRPO, CPBAO, and all the other ones are, any other provincial regulators. They've never heard of them. They don't know what the acronyms mean. They probably can't even name your college if you ask them to. And that is the point. That is the sign that the system is working. The public does not have to know the name of the regulator for the regulator to be doing its job. The fact that they can trust without verifying, that they can walk through your door already at a baseline of safety, is the result of the regulator's invisible work. Your practice runs on that invisible work. Every session you have ever billed for has been, in some real sense, billed in a market that the college has made possible. Now, I said at the start that the frustrations are real, and I want to honor that because if I just told you, stop complaining about your college, they're doing their job, you are wrong to be frustrated, that would be dismissive and also wrong. The frustrations are valid. Let me name a few of the big ones and then walk through what each one is actually about. The annual fee. The annual fee is the thing that pays for the infrastructure that does everything I just described. The salaries of the investigators who look into complaints, the legal staff, the communications team, the licensing administrators, the IT systems that run the public register, the cost of running a regulatory body for thousands of practitioners across a province year after year. None of that is free. Somebody has to fund it. The funding model in most regulated professions is that the practitioners themselves fund it through annual fees. Is the fee sometimes too high relative to what the average practitioner makes in our field? Possibly. There are legitimate conversations to be had about scale and structure and whether the fee burden is distributed fairly. But the existence of a fee is not the betrayal. The fee is the price of the door your clients walk through. Without it, the door doesn't exist. The CE requirements. Continuing education requirements exist because the field changes. New research comes out, new modalities emerge, new populations need to be served in ways the original training didn't cover. The requirement to engage in ongoing learning is the structural mechanism that prevents the field from stagnating. Without it, a therapist who registered in 1998 could still be practicing in 2026 with the same training, the same assumptions, the same blind spots, completely unaware of everything the field has learned in the intervening years. The CE requirements are sometimes clunky. Some of them feel performative, and some of the providers are not great. There is real work to be done on improving the CE infrastructure in many provinces. But the principle that practitioners stay current is not the problem. That is the structure protecting your clients from a stagnant version of you. The documentation standards, I know. The documentation standards are the ones that make practitioners groan the loudest. The session notes, the progress documentation, the consent forms, the intake records, all of it. Here is what I want you to know about documentation standards. Every one of them is written from a case where something went wrong. Every requirement, every form, every box you have to tick, somewhere in the history of the profession, there was a situation where the absence of that documentation hurt a client or hurt a practitioner. When you document well, you are protecting your client and you are protecting yourself. The documentation requirements that feel like the most administrative area are ones that, if a complaint ever came your way, that would be the only thing standing between you and a process that does not go well for you. Now, the complaints process. And this is the one that I think feels the most personal. The complaint process feels like it could fall on any of us at any time for reasons we cannot fully anticipate. And the way it's structured can feel weighted towards the complainant. The complaints process exists because clients need recourse. Without a complaints process, a client who has been harmed has nowhere to go. They can post a review online. She can tell her friends. Maybe she has no formal way to surface a practitioner who should not be practicing. The process can absolutely be improved, and many provinces have been working on improving it. The fairness of investigations, the speed of resolution, the support available to the practitioner being investigated, all of those things matter. Advocate for those improvements, sit on the committees, submit input on consultations. That is the right way to change the process. But the existence of a complaints process is not what is making your life harder. The existence of a complaints process is what makes your professional title mean something. The audit or the practice review. I mentioned audits at the top of the episode because almost every therapist I have ever talked to who has either lived through one or has a colleague who has. And the stories tend to be told with a certain kind of weary trauma. The weeks of evenings going through files, the questions that feel invasive, the sense that you are guilty until proven innocent. Audits feel terrible. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Being asked to open up your practice records to scrutiny, even when you have nothing to hide, is uncomfortable. It activates all the same nervous system responses any of us would have when our work is being formally examined. And the audit is the mechanism that lets the college do its job at scale, because the college cannot supervise every session in real time. And the college cannot sit in on intake calls or read every progress note as it's being written. So the audit is that periodic check-in that says the people who hold this credential are practicing the way they said they would when they earned it. It is the structural follow-through on the trust the public extends. If audits did not exist, the standards of practice would be aspirational only. They would mean nothing. The audit is the part where the standards become real, which again is what makes the credential mean anything in the first place. So here's the distinction that I want to leave you with. You can disagree with specific policies, and you can absolutely think a particular requirement is poorly designed, or a particular policy is out of step with how the work actually gets done, or a particular fee structure is not fair to practitioners in your region. You can think your college needs better technology, faster processes, more support for the people being investigated, or more responsive consultation. All of that is legitimate. All of that is the work of a profession that holds its own institutions accountable. Reform happens because practitioners advocate for it. What I'm pushing back on is not reform. What I'm pushing back on is the framing of the college as the enemy. Because when we talk about our college as if it's adversarial, as if it exists to make our lives harder, as if it does not understand us, as if it is something to be evaded or worked around, we are doing something to ourselves and to our profession that I think we underestimate. We are passing that frame down. The newer therapist in the room, the one who just got registered, the one in their first year of practice, the one still learning what all of this looks like, they absorb that frame. They learn to roll their eyes when the renewal email arrives. They learn to brace when they have to update their file. They enter the profession already adversarial to the structure that makes the practice possible. And then, when they become a senior therapist in the room, they pass it down again. And the cynicism deepens. And the institution becomes harder to reform from the inside because the practitioners, who would normally be the ones to volunteer for committees, to run for council positions, to be part of the reform conversation, have already written the institution off as a lost cause. Cynicism is contagious. It's also unproductive. It costs us the very thing that would actually improve our college, engage practitioners who take ownership of the institution that legitimizes their work. So I'm not asking you to love your college, and I'm not asking you to stop having frustrations. I am asking you to hold the institution as something that exists for you, not against you, even when specific encounters with it are clunky, even when the renewal email is annoying, even when you feel the new policy is poorly designed. The institution exists for you. It exists because of you and because of every practitioner who has ever worked in this profession and the public that needed the protection. You can disagree with it. You can advocate for change, but you don't have to treat it like an adversary. So here's what I want to invite you to do this week. Pick one thing about your college that you have been resentful about. It can be small. It could be the annual fee, the CE log, the renewal portal, the latest policy update, whatever is currently sitting somewhere in your body as that low level ugh. Now, instead of dwelling on the frustration of it, ask yourself one question. What is this actually protecting? Not from a place of pretending you have to be grateful, not from a place of suppressing the legitimate frustration, from a place of curiosity. What is the underlying purpose of this thing? Whose interest is it serving, and what would happen if it did not exist? For the CE log, the answer might be it's protecting the public from a profession that stops learning. It might also be protecting future you from being a practitioner who stagnated for 10 years without noticing. For the renewal portal, the answer might be it's protecting the public's ability to verify that you are still in good standing, which by extension is what keeps your title meaningful. For the documentation standards, the answer might be it's protecting both your clients and you in the event that something ever goes wrong and a record matters. You may sit with a question and decide the requirement is in fact poorly designed, and that's fine. That's real. That's information you can take into a consultation or a committee or a conversation with a colleague who wants to advocate for change. Knowing what something is supposed to protect makes you a better advocate for fixing it, not a worse one. But for most of us, sitting with that question once, just once with curiosity, it does something quiet. The frustration becomes less personal. The college stops being the adversary. The thing you were dreading becomes at minimum comprehensible. And from comprehension, you can choose your relationship to it intentionally instead of inheriting the default cynicism the profession has handed you. So a few last things before I let you go. If this episode has landed for you, if something in here gave you a slightly different way to hold the relationship between your practice and your college, I would actually love to hear about it. Whether you agree with me or push back, I'd love to know what came up. You can email me, you can find me on Instagram, send me a DM. I read them all. And if you know another therapist who's been carrying around a low-grade adversarial relationship with their college for years, please share this episode with them, not to scold, just to offer the reframe. Sometimes a different angle from someone outside the immediate frustration is what shifts something. And if you're new to the podcast, welcome. I am so glad you're here. The easiest way to make sure you do not miss a single episode is to hit subscribe or follow in whatever app you're listening in. New episodes come out every Monday. And before I go, one more thing, and I want to say it directly. Your private practice is downstream of public trust in the profession. Every client who books a session with you, every referral that comes your way, every fee you ever have collected, every relationship that you've built across the course of your career, all of it is downstream of the public's baseline trust that therapist is a regulated, vetted, accountable profession. And the institution maintaining that trust year after year behind the scenes is your college. You don't have to love every policy, and you don't have to stop being frustrated. You can advocate for reform. You can push for better systems. You can sit on committees. You can submit input. You can do all of that. And underneath all of that, the institution exists for you, not against you. Holding it that way, even with all the legitimate frustration intact, changes something about how the relationship sits in your body and in mine. Take care of yourself, take care of your practice, and I will see you next Monday. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Build Your Private Practice podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a fellow Canadian therapist who needs this. And remember, the work you do matters. Keep showing up, keep holding space, and keep building a practice that works for you. If you're looking for practical tools or support to grow your practice with more clarity and confidence, head to buildyourprivatepractice.ca. There's lots waiting for you there. I'll see you next time.